Thank you for joining the Power BI webinar. My name is Peter Phillips, and I'm head of the business development team here at BCN and your host for today's session. We know this is going to be an informative session on Power BI, the cloud-based business intelligence tool that helps turn your data into decisions. In this webinar, you'll learn how Power BI can help you transform, visualize, and analyze your data, and how BCN can support you in your data journey. You'll also see a live demo of Power BI and have the opportunity to ask questions to our experts. We're delighted to have three speakers from BCN with us today who will share their insights and experience with Power BI. They are Mike Gleeson, Head of Data Services, Mike Worrell, Head of Data and Systems, and Mark Rotherham, our Chief Technical Officer. Before we begin, let me share some housekeeping rules. Please mute your microphone and turn off your camera during the presentation. If you have any questions, please type them into the chat box and we'll address them at the end of the webinar. The webinar will be recorded as mentioned and will be shared with you afterwards. We hope you enjoy it and find it useful. Just to quickly run through the agenda, we'll be going through a high-level overview who Mike Worrell will be presenting. We'll then dive into the data journey, which Mark will be covering off. And then we'll look at some BI use cases that Mike Gleeson will go into more detail on. And we'll then explore the Power BI ecosystem, which Mike Worrell will look at, and also look how we can get started, or shall I say you can get started with using it. Also giving you a high-level overview on some real-life cases and a demo. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Mike Worrell.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. There's a bit of a Power BI overview on here. What is Power BI? So Power BI is part of the Power Platform suite. Power BI is a cloud-based application that connects and visualizes data for informed decision-making. Now, everyone's really familiar with Power BI and what it offers in terms of data visualization. One of the things that is majorly missed on this is that Power BI as a service also offers a data engineering element to it, and it's software as a service. So Power BI has improved data visibility and insights. So as mentioned, a lot of people will be familiar with the self-service interactive visualizations that are available with Power BI, how you're able to slice and dice, how you're able to view all the data, whether it be on a mobile, a tablet, a TV, or your desktop, anything that's got an internet connection, you can go into that data. And it's the part that everyone's familiar with, how you can go into it, how you can slice the data, how you interact with it. It's a self-service software as a service that you can go into. But when we get to increased efficiency and productivity, there's a part of the Power BI as a service that perhaps isn't as utilized as often by people or isn't known about as well. This allows us, using Power BI as a service, to pipeline data, to run ETLs, to extract, transform, and load, and run all that data on a scheduled refresh. And this can all happen within Power BI as a service, which you access through your Office 365 accounts. This provides us with real-time collaboration and communication. So what does this give us? This gives us one version of the truth. So the reports that you're actually getting through Power BI as a service can have pipeline data using something we'll elaborate on further in this this webinar in terms of data flows, how you can run extract, transforms, and loads on the scheduled refresh, storing data in a data lake, and then have that presented on a mobile tablet, TV, desktop, PC, where you can slice, dice, and interact with that report, ensuring you have one version of the truth all through Power BI as a service, which is included in your Power BI licensing, whether it be a pro account, all that's already in there. So there's no additional costs that can be incurred on that one.
That's great. Thanks, Mike, for that overview. Mark, would you like to go through the data journey?
Yeah, sure. So what I'm going to do now is just go through a bit of a kind of maturity curve and journey that we typically see customers go through when they start to look at trying to get value out of data. Now, with all things we look at, we do have kind of different levels of maturity. And the whole idea with kind of showing this graphic is that what we want you to do is build on a solid foundation. So start from a base where we can build out and improve, iterate over time, and eventually get to more advanced capabilities where effectively you're making many more data-led decisions. So the idea isn't that you have to jump all the way to a full data kind of led strategy with a significant investment up front. The idea is that we can take you on a journey, meet you where you are, where you want to go next, but also look at solid foundations that we build as we go along, that we can expand on and improve on over time. So the way that I kind of tell this story is starting with what we see quite a lot of people doing today, and that is by looking at Power BI as a citizen developer type service. So Microsoft have done a really good job of empowering everyone to be able to have a go at this. And on this kind of chart here, what I'm showing is we've got consumers on the left that have got Excel. They might even get to the point of having SQL, and they have a go. You know, they go and create a Power BI dashboard, and if they are feeling kind of really clever, they might even go and publish that dashboard to some other people. Now, this is great as a starting point. So what it does, it opens the doors to Power BI, gives you a really nice way of exploring data that really does take you forward from traditional Excel and pivot tables. It gives you really fast speed to value, so you can get insights out of your data really quickly just by doing these simple steps. And it is a huge leap from the traditional static reporting, because you can get it to update automatically. So it's the starting point, and what we see is a lot of people doing this today, yeah, and it's a really good eye opener, but it does come with some issues which we want to address as we kind of get to the next step. So this is really just familiarization. It's understanding what the art of the possible is, and starting to explore data in a different dimension. As we kind of build on that, the thing we've added in here is what Mike was referring to a moment ago around the concept of a pipeline. Now, the whole idea with a pipeline is that we start to make things a little bit more robust. Now, this does pivot away from it being fully citizen developer kind of led. So as you can see on the left, we've now got data people. I'll call them data people because it's a nice generic term, but these people look at it from a different perspective. Yes, they need to know the data, but what they're doing is making sure that we start working towards the most important thing, a single source of truth. Yeah, so what they're doing is they're taking the data sets coming in, they're looking at them, they're wrapping them into the pipelines, and they're going to publish out a source of truth that you can rely on. One of the biggest pitfalls we see that stifles Power BI is when we start to see lots of different dashboards popping up that are supposed to see the same metric and the same numbers, but they don't. And that's because you've got different people taking feeds from different versions of files, presenting it out there, and we've not got this step at the front, which is washing the data and making sure we've got some control around it as we move it forward. So the whole idea with the data pipeline is we get a reusable asset that we can apply to the data ecosystem. We can scale it up and down based on demand. It doesn't have to just be Excel and SQL, it can be other things as well. We can allow collaboration on this. You can have multiple people working on a pipeline, so that you've got a good sense of if someone leaves, you know, you're not going to lose that skill and that capability. So you start to solve some other problems that the citizen developer brings. You can wrap security around these as well, so you make sure that the right things are happening. You can trust the data coming through them. But again, the most important thing on here is that single source of truth. It's being able to present something that you can rely on and point out and say that's right, and it's right all of the time. So as we kind of evolve from that, we start to look at, right, so we've now got a single source of truth. How do we make this even better? How do we grow this ecosystem and apply it further? So again, I'm going to build this out slightly with the concept of the data mart. Now, this is where we start to look at organizational adoption and almost a community approach to data. So every organization has got different teams, and those different teams have got different needs for their data. They don't need to see everything that you put through your data ecosystem. They need to see subsets of it. And the whole idea with this data mart kind of concept is we can take that single source of truth and then give the right permissions and role-based access to the teams that need to consume it. So they're seeing the single source of truth data, but they're only seeing what they need to see. And this can, you can go as far as organizational units, so HR, sales team, your project teams, your engineering teams, all those kind of things. Or you can even go as granular as individual people with the role-based access. Then you can only see data that's relevant to them. So what this does, it kind of gives you the approach of organizational adoption. You bring in the organization together to take value of this data. They're all being able to use the data that's relevant to them in their dashboards and visualizations. And you're starting to wrap governance around this as well. You're starting to get feedback that says, actually, this is what I need, this is what's important to me. So it starts to open up a two-way conversation between the people on the left that are providing the data and the people on the right that are consuming it. So it's a really kind of key step, and just anecdotal. This is where BCN are at today. We've got organizational adoption of our data that's being deployed to us that we can either consume as data, we can consume it as a data set, or we can consume it as curated Power BI dashboards that have been created for us. So we can kind of choose which way we want to go, and neither's right or wrong. And we see a mix of some teams actually comfortable creating dashboards off data that's been presented to them. Other teams really want a nice dashboard created for them that they don't have to worry about. The final kind of stage of this is where we start to get a little bit more advanced. So we've got everything we've talked about before. We've got our pipeline, we've got our concept of the data marts and the community adoption. But because we've built on a solid foundation within the Power BI ecosystem, we're now able to do other interesting things. So what I've shown on here is the concept of another pipeline, which is going to take a subset of that data and put it somewhere else, because what you want to do is actually apply machine learning, AI, intelligence over that data. So because we've kind of got this structured approach, we can then burst out and say, actually, let's take this subset of data over here, put it in a different database. It could be SQL, it could be Cognos, it could be something else. And we can start to do more advanced intelligence services wrapped around that. And AI is just one example here. We can start to do data cubes, we can start to do point in time kind of data copies and things like that. But again, it's kind of an iterative approach where you don't have to jump to this point at the beginning. You can build up to it as appropriate. The other really cool thing we can do at this point is start to look at not only making Power BI a kind of read-only mechanism, we can start to have triggers out of it as well. So what this means is you can use the metrics, the tables, the things, the visualizations within Power BI to start to create data-led actions. And these can be things as simple as a Teams message or an email, or anything as advanced as a Power Automate flow or hitting a specific API. So it really does change the dynamic of your efforts into data and reporting into actually data reporting and action, which is a really cool feature that Microsoft have opened up in Power BI now. So kind of just to summarize that, you've got the ability to go further. You can look at advanced warehousing, advanced compute. We can start to do more with the pipelines at this stage. So having much more frequent refreshes of the data. We can put advanced error handling in there as appropriate as well. And we can do actions with the data activator. Now, I've kind of laid that out in a linear fashion. That's one way you could approach it. You could go from the start, with reactive all the way through to where we are with embedded data, but you don't necessarily have to. You can choose where you want to get and how you want to get there, and there's more than one way to skin a cat, as they say. So with this kind of last slide just on the journey, I'm kind of showing that there are lots of different approaches to data. Starting with Excel into Power BI is a great place to experiment and to start off with. And you can move through the data mart and eventually look at maybe advanced warehousing and eventually, if you really have a strong need, go into a full Microsoft Lakehouse where you can combine your data with your flat files and do even more great things. You know, everybody's journey is subtly different, and I think the key thing for me is understanding what the art of the possible is, where your target is, and helping get you to that next stage. So that's a little bit of an overview on the journey, and I'm going to hand over to Mike now to go through some of the use cases we've seen recently.
Well, thanks, Mark, and morning, everybody. I just want to go through a really common scenario that we tend to have with a lot of our clients, and it's around monthly reporting. So what we find is that a lot of the customers, they'll have monthly reporting packs that they use for management information and management meetings. It's got things in it like sales, financials, HR. It's pulling from a wide range of data sources, so very similar to the slides that Mark outlined earlier. So they might have Excel, they've got SharePoint sites, they've got SaaS products or a CRM system. A lot of them are heavily reliant on Excel still, and they spend a lot of time doing manual workarounds with Excel, clashing sheets together to produce these management packs. The packs are emailed out, and by the time the management teams get them, they're out of date. And they can take days to put together, and the data is only accessible when they pull it at different periods throughout the month. So it's retrospective data, which obviously causes problems when you're trying to manage a business. The solution that we have for this is that we use data flows, and it pulls data from the various different sources and puts it through into Power BI. It's all automated, so it starts to produce monthly reporting packs really quickly. It's accessible on all devices, so you can do it on your tablet, you can do it on a mobile, etc. It's given to the management team, so they get the insights into the data that they wouldn't normally have, and it's also in real time. It's delivered in an agile way, so it doesn't take as long or cost as much as most people would expect. So that's, it kind of outlines like what Mark was saying earlier in the slide deck, but it gives some real life examples, and we've got numerous videos of clients that are on the website where we've done this exact thing. Some of the questions that we get asked are, you know, normally how long does it take to implement this? Well, one of the customers that we've just recently done this for, they were spending around 15 days a month actually pulling data together. We'd actually implemented the solution in less than that amount of time, and now it's fully automated, so it saves them 15 days per month. It's role level security, so again, who can access it and what can they see? As an organization, you can determine what you want people to see, so it's one source of truth, and that can be deployed out to numerous different areas of the business, and they only have access to what you want them to. So you never get in a scenario where there's different sets of data being sent around to lots of different people and they've all got different views. And probably the most common question that we get is just around data maturity. No company has completely clean data. I think it's a myth or a unicorn. You know, I think everybody's on a data journey. Just some people are more mature than others. What we find with these projects is it actually takes you on a maturity journey. So you don't have to have all your data in a clean, an accessible way. Part of one of these projects is that you start to give visibility of the data and your business starts to understand it. So you clean it up as you're going through a process. So you get lots of different value from running a project, and we have lots of accolades that we've had from different clients, which are a couple of them on the slide deck, but more than happy to talk through and go through these with anybody. Thanks.
Okay, so describing what Mike Gleason's just gone through there is the Power BI ecosystem. So this really explains how data flows work within the Power BI as a service. So what we have on the left here, we have the data sources. What we put on this example here is Excel, some SharePoint, and that could be SharePoint in terms of folders, it could be SharePoint in terms of lists, data really from any sources. So we've also got a SQL server on there. It could be a whole myriad. It doesn't have to be 3, it could be 10, it could be 15. You could actually have web services on there. What there are within Power BI as a service in terms of data flows, that there are hundreds of connectors, hundreds of connectors that are already pre-built in there. Anything that is not pre-built in there, we can also build a custom connector on those as well. So we can pretty much go get any data we want from the left-hand side here. This example, Excel, SharePoint, and SQL. What happens there is we connect to that data, and from that data, we can complete, using Power BI as a service, ETL, so the extract, transform, and load, which is going to run on a scheduled refresh. So in this example, let's say we're going to the Excel, or we're going to the SharePoint file that's there. That data, as Mike Gleason mentioned earlier, it's never quite as clean as we want it to be. It's not quite as good as we want to service it. We do that ETL on that data, place it into the Azure Data Lake Storage, Generation 2, where it sits in there within Power BI as a service, waiting to be connected to. Now, the interesting part next as well that we come on to is the data sets, which is also a semantic layer that I think Matt was talking about before. When we talk about data mats, the data lake storage is really just a library of all your data from all your disparate sources that you want to report on, and then they are modeled together because it's unstructured in the data lake. We then model them together and we publish them. When it's published, that creates a semantic model within the data lake storage, and it's that model that all your Power BI reports that you're familiar with and interact with actually connect to. And we can use the semantic models that Mark was mentioning on the data maturity curve before to create those data mats to a certain extent. So the data comes in from the left-hand side, whether it be Excel, SharePoint, has its ETL, is stored within the data lake. We can then use that data lake, as you can see with some of the links and computes on there, to actually aggregate certain elements of that data. And then we can use that within a semantic layer within the data set the reports connect to. Now, you can use semantic layers in there and reuse them semantic layers. So when you've created one, as in terms of data mat, you can then connect multiple reports to that semantic layer that's coming from your data sources. And because of that, you've got a much better time to value as well, because you're not constantly going creating reports and reports again. So you can have multiple reports coming off those data sets or semantic layers that are in there. All the data that's in there will be run on refreshes, on a refresh schedule. So you can go from your sources. It's worth noting here as well that if you have on-prem data, simply putting in a data gateway can bring your on-prem data into this data lake storage using the exact same process, using ETL, bring that into a storage place and a library where you can consume from, and then have your semantic layer. You've then got your reports moving across and your dashboards that connect to these data sets, or if you wanted to, directly to your data in terms of your Azure Data Lake storage. For your data flows. So you've got an entire ecosystem there within Power BI that you're not having to pay any Azure storage costs for, you're not having to pay any compute for. This is all covered in your standard Power BI Pro licensing, where you can take on-prem data or cloud data, mix it all together into this library, consume, create a semantic layer, and have your reports running off them. And one of the great advantages of this, I keep mentioning going through, is these can all be on a scheduled refresh. So within your standard Power BI as a Pro license, you can have up to 8 refreshes a day on all data sources. Also, that Mike was alluding to before in terms of one version of the truth, the data, because you're not using Power BI reports to go directly into your data source, you've always got that one version of the truth. All the reports will refresh when the data flow is refreshed, because you're connecting to the data flows and not directly to the data source. So therefore, one version of the truth is ensured through governance through your entire Power BI ecosystem. So data flows can give you all your data sets in times of value, one version of the truth, creating a data map that Mark was mentioning before in terms of his data maturity to provide all these reports. And you've never got a chance, an opportunity where people are going into reports with, I refresh my data at 10 o'clock, you refresh yours at 11 o'clock. There are 2 versions. You've always got one version because of the way you're scheduling those refreshes through data flows. The slide. So at BCN, how would we get started with this? Well, what we've used very often with a lot of our clients is a proof of concept, which is a small agile project that we'll run through. And the objective at the start of this will be to look at what you're trying to achieve, what are your requirements, what you're trying to do using Power BI data flows within your organization. Make sure it fits, make sure it's all doable, for want of a better word. And then we move on to a data source exploration. So we'd have to understand your data sources and their structure. We have a look at the connectivity, so whether it be an Excel file, whether it be SharePoint files, structuring that a little bit, ensuring the data you've got is going to allow you to achieve your requirements. Are there mapping tables in there? Things like cost codes. Understand that in depth, understand exactly what we're going to bring into that data library we mentioned before in terms of data flows that are going to come on a scheduled refresh. Identify it, bring it in as part of that POC. At that stage as well, we'll also understand, as Mike Lewis mentioned earlier, no one's data is perfect. There's going to be some data transformation that happens there. There's going to be some ETL. That happens within the data flows. We have to understand that before we actually perform the ETL and put it into that data lake ready for consumption. So far we've understood the requirements, we've understood the data sources, we've transformed the data, we've now got it in the library. So this is the part where we would then go on to, actually, let's create a report. So on the report, we'll be connecting to that library of data flows, whether reports, dashboards, or apps, which we'll give a little bit of a demonstration of later on what apps are and the reports. We're going to create the reports to the client's needs. So some might want a much more tabular version of their data. Some would like a much more graphical interface. Some would like a mix of the two. Do a lot more kind of bar charts. We want line charts in there. How do they want to? How do they actually want these reports to look and feel? So they'll be then created. And the next part is the test and iteration of that. So we've gone through the whole journey. Is it now giving us what we anticipated? Is it providing what the client wants in terms of the reports? Has it covered all the requirements? So test and iteration, that will involve some of the clients as well, going in there and actually validating the data flows and the reports to make sure that it gives them exactly what they want. Once it passed that testing, we'll then go into deployment. So as part of the managed service, we'll manage that all the way through, but then we'll publish that report into your environment, ready for consumption, providing users with access to it, etc., etc. And the idea is then that it would link back up again for another project to go, let's, as part of the managed service, let's repeat that cycle and increase this data library, increase the reports, increase the amount of reports you've got in your environment as per the needs that come along. But the key thing to stress on this is the time to value to complete this whole process is a lot less than you actually think, using data flows to identify from the requirements, the data flows, the ETL, the report, test it, deploy it, and then hopefully repeat process. So now onto a little bit of a demo. So I'll just share my screen for this and take you into a demo here of our Power BI. So what I'm going to take you into now is actually an application that's going to show you some of the reports that we've created. These are demos and they've all got made up data that's in there, but I'll take you into an app. Now you can have reports that are through workspaces, and people might be familiar with workspaces within Power BI, but it actually looks a lot better if you actually place your reports into apps, and I'll show you why on these. So what we have here, if I go through for this, is if you can imagine the top, this is almost a matrix. So all your reports have been condensed into this app, and you can give people access to the app rather than all the individual reports and having to manage them. So you could have multiple apps. You're not committed to just having one app. You can have two or three. So once again, the way you want this to look and feel is completely optional to each and every client. But if you look at the top here, I've got all selected, but you could have different departments, whether it be engineering, operations, HR, across the top. And all the reports, so you have one go-to place to see all those reports. So all the reports on the left, if I just take you through some examples of these, I'll take you through some HR examples in terms of people and an overview. You get your standard Power BI interactivity in here, so we can slice and dice the data in terms of what we are seeing on there, which is exactly how Power BI is supposed to be used. It's all interactive. So if I take you into what we've got down as people and an overview. We can look at some HR data. Once again, I'll anonymize this. We can look at, we can slice and dice. The whole of the page here is going to change with whatever I slice and dice. Simply holding control on the reports is going to allow me to see different metrics. If I just want to see the IT team, I'm just clicking on here, seeing it's 100% male in the IT team. I'm sure that's not the case. I can change anything and click and interact with this as I want. If I just want to see full-time employees, I would just see full-time employees by interacting with the data. This has all been modeled beforehand to make sure that the data that's been brought in is going to allow these interactions. Other parts of this that we can show you, gender gap, just choosing at random here. We can once again show pay gap overview. I can interact in this by clicking various elements of it. I can change the dates on this to give myself more data, less data than I want. Once again, this is a full sample of data. It's a demo account. I can then go into another part. Once pretend I'm not looking at the HR elements here, and I want to go and look at this healthcare. We can look at a dashboard in here. I have the ability to slice and dice this information to whatever I want. So I can interact, I can increase that, I can interact with the maps. So if I were to look at just one postcode here, the whole of the report's going to change. So depending on what I want to see, there is other elements on here that just wait for it to load in. To show a different visualization on how you can actually see the data here. This one is much more less interactive. Once again, date slicers on here. I can remove certain filters that have been defined in the report before. I can look at 12 months of data. I don't think the data actually goes back that far, so not a good selection. And see all the metrics changing by whatever I want to see or click on these. There's also other integrations that go on this one, which would be, let's load in again 1 second. Showing you here a bit more of a, excuse me, it's a bit more of a traditional click-through kind of landing page that you can have on your reports if that's what somebody wanted to see. So I could look at appointments on here, and I could see certain elements of this. Once again, interactivity is built as standard through this. I might want to only look at consultants in this data, consultants and radiotherapists. This is healthcare data. The interactions with, I can go back, I can add certain filters in here, or clear filters, sorry. I can go back to that landing page if I wanted to, look at things such as location within the data. Once again, I can take a certain element of this data that I only want to see. I'm just going to look at location data because it's all been modeled behind the scenes on these. There is other visualizations you can use in here. Once again, there's like a workload in this one example, which is very good for any kind of customer satisfaction kind of metrics you want to use in there. But the idea was to show you it's so flexible. You can pretty much build a landing page. You can just use the app as they are, have different departments around the tops, and give people to 1, 2, 5, whatever many apps you want. Give people, the users, access to the apps so they can see the reports that are relevant to them. Or you can have an all one where it's a go-to place where you can see all your reports. That's it. I'll just stop sharing my screen there.
Thanks, Mark. I think we just wanted to leave a bit of time for Q&A at the end, so I'll try and run through this quickly, but we're more than happy to have a more in-depth conversation with anybody that wants to find out more. We have 3 levels of service offering that we look for with our Power BI support service. Data Essentials, Data Service Pro, and Data Service Managed Service. It's a bit of a tongue tingle on that one, but if I just go through each of them, the Data Service Essentials, this is really keeping the lights on. So using the scenario that we went through earlier, that we've built a number of dashboards for a customer. They've got somebody internally that can use Power BI, and they're quite happy to try and create some of them themselves. But as it's used as a management tool, they want to make sure that it works all the time. Whether that's that the data flow falls over, or something goes wrong with the dashboard, or they just need a little bit of help with something. So our essential service is really giving you that support so that you can just pull upon it when you need it, and it uses our help desk in our core UK hours, so you can ring up whenever you like. The Data Service Pro support has got everything that's in the Data Service Essentials, apart from it's got a number of consulting days. So for example, something goes wrong with your dashboards, you want some help, you can ring the support desk, but you'll have somebody that you work with on an ongoing basis. So if you know that there's a lot of dashboards that you want to create throughout a period, or you know that this is going to keep growing and you want some support for your internal BI team, we would have a number of consultancy days where the consultant will come and work with you as a client and with your team, just to make sure that you're getting the support that you need and build up that Power BI pack or dashboarding that's going out to the rest of the business. And then the last one's the Data Service Managed Service. This is very much a fully managed outsourced service, which is outsourcing all of your Power BI. So we have some customers that are quite large, and actually they want to outsource the service to us. So we might have dedicated people that work on that account all full time, and they'll just work as part of the business. So it's like they're part of that BI team, and they'll be creating dashboards or creating ETLs, etc., whatever the business wants. So that's the managed service, and in the next slide, it just goes into a little bit of detail. Again, we're more than happy to share this, and it's on the website under the Power BI pages. But this just outlines some of the different areas of support. This one's got the Pro service highlighted, so it has everything that's in the Data Essentials, but just outlines what you'd get from having a consultant that's working with you on an agreed time basis. And then the fully managed service has everything included in terms of the support elements. So, whether it's creating data flows or support with DAX, probably some of the more complex things that you might expect from somebody that needs that level of service. So I think that's it in terms of the presentation. And I think, Peter, we're looking at a Q&A.
Yes, thank you, gentlemen. I think that was super informative and gave the audience a great overview on Power BI and what it can do for the business. So we've not had any questions pop up in the chat. I don't know. I know there were reports that some could use the chat and others not, but keen to open up the floor to see if there are any questions that you might have. If this isn't the opportunity now to ask those questions, then obviously you're welcome to contact us at your leisure, and we'll be sharing the slide deck. Is there anyone who has any questions for the guys? It looks like the webinar was that informative that it kind of addressed everything. Mark, did you want to say anything?
I think people are just being added to the chat at the moment, so they might be able to ask a question in a moment. So I think there might have been a bit of a glitch in setting up the webinar to allow questions coming in. So I think in the absence of people being able to do it and any coming through, just reach out to your account managers if there are any questions, and we can get the team on a call if needed to follow up and help out with any of the Power BI or data questions you might have, or how to move it forward. I think that's probably the best way to leave it now, Peter.
Yep. Well, thank you again for joining today's webinar. We'll obviously share the content with those who joined and were registered. And please feel free to visit our website for further news and updates on future webinars and podcasts that we've got. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Take care and have a great day. All the very best.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.